Alright guys, so over the last few days and over the last week, one of the biggest topics that have been trending everywhere is that Mark Zuckerberg, the private tech giant who founded Facebook and now has moved on to Meta and other projects of the like, went on the Joe Rogan Experience podcast. Now, everyone knows what the Joe Rogan Experience is, but if you guys don't know, basically, commentator Joe Rogan has on any type of guest, anything that you can think of, and he basically extracts every part of their brain and just melts it all down into a 3-hour podcast. And ultimately, this could lead to some very, very viral clips, because whenever someone is talking for 3 hours, it's not all that rare that they stumble upon something that they might not have wanted to admit. Now, there is a lot of different things that Joe Rogan and Mark Zuckerberg talk about. As you can imagine, they don't have much in common. Joe Rogan being a very chill guy who likes to smoke weed and relax. Mark Zuckerberg being a robot-like entity with firm buttoned-up shirt and all that. He's basically just a corporate kind of guy, not overly cool or socially adept in any sense of the word. So there is a lot that they talked about together. I'm not going to cover everything because I didn't watch the entire thing. That's very hard with the lacking attention spans that we have nowadays. But I'm just briefly going to talk about his statements about VR, because that's not the main topic of the video, so I figured let's just get it over with. Basically, what Mark Zuckerberg's statement was about VR and AR. If you don't know, AR is basically just alternate reality, which is similar to virtual reality. And basically his thoughts are that he likes VR and AR and he's for it, and he is in charge of probably the biggest VR platform on the face of the earth, at least the one that is slated to be the biggest in the not so distant future. And he claims that it's going to unlock a lot of economic opportunity for a lot of people, and it would make it so that you don't have to move to the big city to succeed and stuff like that. In my opinion, I think VR could be the next big addiction, along with adult content and other stuff that has plagued this generation. I think this could very much seep into the consciousness of a lot of people and cause them to completely forget their own life and just focus on some virtual one that other things have already done, such as video games and adult content, as I already mentioned. So the main thing about this interview, and the thing that obviously got the most views, is this 8.4 million view clip of basically Zuckerberg talking about Facebook's interference in the 2020 election and what they did to prevent certain information from getting out to the general public that would definitely lead to a swing in the amount of votes given to each candidate, and would ultimately, in a lot of people's opinion, lead to Donald Trump winning his second term. So this is obviously hyper-politicized. Depending on what part of the political spectrum you fall onto, you're going to have a different opinion of this, but many conservatives are up in arms ever since the election, arguing that it was completely unfair because of this very thing that Mark Zuckerberg just decided to drop on the American people around a year and a half after the actual election took place. So I'm going to play this clip. It's only 2 minutes, 23 seconds long, but it is the most important and viral clip that was recorded during the Joe Rogan podcast with Mark Zuckerberg. Let's take a look.
How do you guys handle things when they're a big news item that's controversial? Like, there was a lot of attention on Twitter during the election because of the Hunter Biden laptop story. The New York
we had those
Post.
too.
Yeah, so you guys censored that as well?
So we took a different path than Twitter. Basically, the background here is the FBI, I think, basically came to us, some folks on our team, and was like, hey, just so you know, like, you should be on high alert. We thought that there was a lot of Russian propaganda in the 2016 election. We have it on notice that basically there's about to be some kind of dump that's similar to that. So just be vigilant. So our protocol is different from Twitter's. What Twitter did is they said you can't share this at all. We didn't do that. What we do is we have, if something is reported to us as potentially misinformation, important misinformation, we also have this third-party fact-checking program because we don't want to be deciding what's true and false. And for I think it was 5 or 7 days when it was basically being determined whether it was false, the distribution on Facebook was decreased, but people were still allowed to share it. So you could still share it, you could still consume it.
Can we say the distribution is decreased?
It got shared.
How does that work?
It basically, the ranking in newsfeed was a little bit less. So fewer people saw it than would have otherwise. So it definitely...
By what percentage?
I don't know off the top of my head, but it's meaningful. But basically, a lot of people were still able to share it. We got a lot of complaints that was the case. And obviously this is a hyper-political issue, so depending on what side of the political spectrum, you either think we didn't censor it enough or censored it way too much. But we weren't sort of as black and white about it as Twitter. We just kind of thought, hey, look, if the FBI, which I still view as a legitimate institution in this country, it's like very professional law enforcement, if they come to us and tell us that we need to be on guard about something, then I want to take that seriously.
Did they specifically say you need to be on guard about that story?
No, I don't remember if it was that specifically, but it basically fit the pattern.
So basically, in layman's terms, what Mark Zuckerberg just admitted on the Joe Rogan podcast was that Facebook was acting out in the interest of the FBI, who told them to do what they did. And what they did was they limited the algorithmic response that their platform had to the Hunter Biden laptop information. And if you don't know about the Hunter Biden laptop, the things that were on the Hunter Biden laptop were very, very controversial. For one, there was a deal with some Ukrainian oil companies between said companies and the Biden family, in which 10% was meant to be left for the big guy, which allegedly is Joe Biden himself. So Joe Biden had corrupt dealings with the Ukrainian oil companies while he was in office as the vice president of the United States from 2008 to 2016. That was one thing that was on the laptop. There were countless other things, such as Hunter Biden smoking crack with some underage females and stuff like that. Some very sketchy things were on that laptop that many people, as I already said earlier in the video, do think would have prevented Joe Biden from securing that victory, and Facebook thwarted the election. Now, the problem with Facebook acting in the interest of the FBI is that it is a private company, so it's not supposed to be controlled by the government. We all know that that isn't the case, though, and that freedom of speech and freedom of expression is something that is dying every day in the American society, I guess you can say. And we just have more evidence of this. It's very interesting that Mark Zuckerberg was willing to admit this. I do have to give him props for coming onto the Joe Rogan podcast. It is a huge risk for him and something that he doesn't need to do with the amount of money that he has. But I do kind of respect him for doing this, and it is very, very fascinating that he admitted to the entire world that his platform was basically somewhat responsible for the election results in 2020, and they were preventing users from getting information that would have been crucial in their voting process. And of course, you can always say that the information shouldn't have been released at that exact time, but that is neither here nor there, because that is not the doing of either of the candidates, so it is all fair play. If some whistleblower behind the scenes decided to unveil such information at a certain time, there's nothing you can really do about that, because it was within his freedom to do so, and that's really his right as an American citizen. So it's a very complicated issue, but it is very, very, very cool that we have some sort of corroboration on what exactly was being done and the types of things that social media platforms do to hide the truth from their users. And if you didn't already believe that the media was lying to you, this is straight up, undeniable evidence from the people that are doing it themselves. With that being said, guys, I'm going to end it off here because I think I got my point across. Thank you so much for watching, and stay vigilant.